Tampa Bay veterans report for training camp on July 25th at One Buccaneer Place as urgency might turn to panic following Jameis Winston's suspension. We'll find out if the Bucs have improved their roster enough to earn their first postseason appearance since 2007 as we preview training camp for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by going one-on-one with David Harrison, Tampa Bay football analyst, on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's Monday, June 25th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we preview NFL training camps for the 2018 season. And we're going to do that today with the Locks on Bucs podcast host, David Harrison. David, thanks for helping us talk Tampa Bay Bucs football today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right, David. So, first of all, tell me a little bit about the Locks on Bucs podcast. How long have you been doing that?
So my co-host and I, James Yarko, we're going into our second full season of doing that. We picked up the Locks on Bucs podcast about the mid to end of last regular season. Picked that up. It was previously manned by Greg Allman of the Tampa Bay Times. He did a great job there, and when he moved on to do his own podcast elsewhere, we jumped on the opportunity and kind of sent in our resumes and some tryout footage. And David Locke of the Locked On Network went ahead and hired us on, and we've been doing it ever since. So
awesome.
It was a great experience to do that and reach out to Bucs fans everywhere.
Now you joined the Army, right? You're
I am. Yeah, I've been in the Army almost 18 years. Yeah,
that's great. Well, thank you very much for that. That's great.
I appreciate it.
And best of luck with everything you're doing. I know you're going to start doing some work with Pro Football Focus. Not sure if you know or not. You know, Neil Hornsby and I go way back. We did shows for 3 years for Pro Football Focus, the official show for that website until Neil sold the company to Chris Collinsworth, of course, and then he had to change role. So, but yeah, best of luck. They're a great company, and just talked to Neil a few months ago. We had him on the show, so that should be a fun time for you. Okay, so I got to ask you, David, we're going to get started on Jameis Winston. Let's get this out of the way because there's a lot I want to get over. I want to talk to you about as far as the roster, more than just Jameis Winston. But tell me what you think is going to happen here when it's all said and done. Do you think it's just going to be a 3-game thing and everything will be fine, or will it all depend on how the team wins or loses without him?
All the reports coming out, all the rumors coming out from very reputable sources like Greg Allman, like Rick Stroud down there in Tampa are saying 3 games is what's expected. So, until something comes out to contradict that, I have no reason myself to really expect anything less or anything more than 3 games. I do think that some of the information that's been coming out recently about, the third rider in the Uber, that's been kind of a question mark, at least publicly for a while now. And now that that's out, maybe, public perception of that. I mean, the NFL is just, they're in a situation where we've seen it before with other players that they're trying to protect the shield and try to levy punishments that kind of seem fair, but also get at the root of the problem. So depending on how this public backlash is being perceived up at the league offices, it could tack on maybe an extra game. I don't think it'll get up to 6. Just what we know publicly right now.
Okay.
If there's something the league knows that they haven't told us yet that might take it to 6, I'm not aware of it. But 3, maybe 4 at the most, depending on how their impression of this backlash has come out.
All right, and Ryan Fitzpatrick will get the starts. I know him well. I'm a Jet fan, so he's a much better quarterback when he is in the backup role, where he only has to play limited games. But unfortunately, even if it's 3 games, those first 3 games are going to be awfully tough. That's a bummer, for fans. I mean, that must be really, hurtful to take a look at the competition over those first 3 weeks without Jameis.
Yeah, it's definitely a rough start. I think I saw on NFL Network it's the hardest 3-game start to a schedule in the Super Bowl era, and fans are definitely feeling, the pain of it. I mean, last year there was all kinds of hype around the team, all kinds of excitement around the team, and obviously things didn't go, the way everybody hoped it would with the defense not performing and Jameis Winston getting injured. So coming into this year, Jason Light has done a great job of getting some new additions, some free agents, some trades. Had a masterful draft, I think. I know we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But fans are really, you can almost feel, that there's hype, kind of building under the surface. The fans are trying to fight it as much as possible because they don't want to be heartbroken like they were last year. And now with the Winston suspension coming, it just kind of adds to a little bit of that. People say it's a Bucs life. That's kind of the way it goes. There's always this kind of feeling of what's coming to ruin our parade, and this kind of seems to be what it is right now.
Yeah, this is what I try to tell Jet fans about how, don't worry, there are other teams out there, other franchises, other fan bases that have suffered more over the last, say, 10 or so. Well, actually, 10 years, since 2002. No playoff wins since 2002, since the Super Bowl year. That is just amazing. I did not realize it was that long.
Yeah, I know it's crazy to think that, with the players that have come through Tampa and some of the coaching staffs and all that, John Gruden gets a lot of credit, and, deservingly so. He definitely was able to come in. They brought some new players in with him, and he was definitely able to put everything together the way Coach Dungy wasn't before him to get over the top and get that Lombardi trophy to Tampa. But ever since then, man, it's just, I don't know, they can never find the right recipe to put it back together and at least get a wild card win. At this point, that's kind of what everybody's looking for is it's just become relevant again as a franchise.
Because this is pretty much it, right, for both Light and Cutter. If they don't, and I don't know, you tell me, is it wins or losses? Is it a playoff appearance? Because I got to believe, especially Cutter, that the leash is extremely short going into this season. So what do you think it's going to take for both of them to hold on to their jobs?
So for both of them to hold on their jobs, I think you're talking playoffs. I think that's just kind of where we're at right now. A lot of people were a little bit surprised when Coach Cutter was retained after last year, but given his second year as a head coach, this I kind of look at as it's his rubber game. It's his swing match. He had a fairly successful season his first year as a head coach, and then last year obviously wasn't so well. So this is kind of the year where he needs to show that he can put together the 2 out of the 3 and make this happen. Whether it's, I think the playoff berth is really just the primary thing. I know most years 9-7 isn't going to get you in the postseason anymore.
Yeah.
But if 9-7 were to get them in the playoffs this year, I think he keeps his job.
Okay.
But 9-7 and no playoffs, and I think that you're definitely at risk of having to switch head coaches again.
Okay, can Light keep his job and find a new coach? Because just looking at his track record as far as the draft, he seems to do a decent job. It's not his fault Winston hasn't worked out at this point. Everybody loved Winston when he came out, and he's had some other really good players that he's drafted over the years. He does a great job with contracts. By making sure that there's no dead cap space. So you think there's a chance that he keeps his job and Cutter doesn't, or do you think they both go, or that's just up in the air depending on the season?
That's really hard to tell. From my aspect of it, I think there's a chance Jason Light can keep his job even if Dirk Cutter doesn't. At the end of the day, and we had this conversation, among some of the Bucs media and fans and everything else last year, talking about who should be fired and who shouldn't be fired, so on and so forth. The roster is talented. This is an underperforming team over the last 2-3 years, and so to me, that speaks to Jason Light doing his job.
Yes.
Looking back at it, 62% of his draft picks are still on the roster. 10 of them are starters or starting caliber players. I say that because wide receiver Chris Godwin is a young guy who is probably not going to be a starter just because of the presence of Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. However, everybody's been ranting and raving about him all season, about how he came in this offseason. We had a chance to have him on the Locked On Bucs podcast a while back, talking to him about the differences between year 1 and year 2. And he's talking about, nutrition and workout routines and, going from college where everything is kind of handheld for you to being a pro where you have to do it on your own. He's definitely looking forward to the second year as a growing experience, and all the coaches so far and the teammates have kind of echoed that sentiment. And then 10 Pro Bowlers on this roster in those years. So given all the struggles that this team has had, to have those types of players on your roster and to have a roster that talented, to me that speaks to a GM and a scouting department that's doing their job. So if there's a problem, it's either with player execution, whether you're talking about Jameis Winston and turnovers or whatever, what have you, or it's from a coaching standpoint where the strategy just isn't fitting the roster.
Well, let's take a look at that roster. First of all, we'll start on offense, and we can go right at that wide receiver position because Deshaun Jackson did not have the year that he was hoping for last year. But that's okay. I mean, one instance, you hear about there was no chemistry with Winston. It was his lowest yards per reception of his career at 13.4. He is getting a little bit older. That was an issue. So what do you think? I mean, do you think Godwin is going to end up with a lot more playing time? Because especially if Jackson doesn't get off to a good start. But again, the chemistry issues are probably going to continue, you would think, without being able to get the reps early on in the season without Winston.
Right. So I don't think the struggles with Deshaun Jackson was so much a chemistry issue as much as it was a utilization issue.
Okay.
My partner and I, James, during the early part of the season, we're kind of beating the table for the Buccaneers to use Deshaun in more of kind of the screen game, use those quick slants, use some of his quick moves off the line of scrimmage to get him the ball early and let him work and make a guy miss here or there, or put some route combinations out there where maybe you have a pick or a rub, or you set up a tight end to kind of leak out and block right as the pass is coming out. Give Deshaun Jackson room to move. And towards the latter part of the year, and when Ryan Fitzpatrick came in a couple times, the Buccaneers started doing that more, where Deshaun Jackson started getting the ball more in the 5 to 8 yard range and turning it into a 12 to 14 yard gain, which is what I think right now in his career is really where he's most dangerous. He still definitely has vertical speed, but until Jameis Winston can really drop it over that shoulder and over the defensive back right into his hands, it's a situation where I think that's where they need to get the most bang for their buck out of Deshaun. And if they can do that early, first quarter, second quarter, even coming out of the half, then that'll open up later when those safeties start to cheat up a little bit, those corners start to get a little bit excited up there for the short routes. That'll open up the opportunity to go over the top. And if you get this separation, if Deshaun Jackson gets behind the secondary, I mean, Jameis really can just kind of throw a teardropper out there and let Deshaun run under it instead of trying to drop it into a certain spot, which is what he was trying to do on a lot of the passes last year.
Okay.
So I think that really had a lot to do with the chemistry there. I think in the beginning of the year, actually, if Ryan Fitzpatrick is there, especially if Jameis doesn't appeal the suspension, I think we'll actually see Deshaun get off to a better start, because Ryan Fitzpatrick he's a little bit more experienced. He kind of has that veteran knowledge, and he knows a little bit how to maximize that potential a little bit more than Jameis does right now in this point in his career.
Okay, what happened to Mike Evans, though? I mean, terrible catch percentage. What happened? Whose fault was that?
I mean, I think Mike Evans is who Mike Evans is. A lot of fans, and Mike Evans himself has kind of harped on his own game about, yards after catch is a big thing. Like, he's just kind of known as a guy who's going to go up, he's going to grab the ball, he's going to come down, and that's pretty much it. Catch percentages and all that stuff, they fluctuate, especially with, rotating quarterbacks, injured quarterbacks. I think Jameis Winston's shoulder there, where he was trying to muscle through it in some of those games, really has a little bit something to do with that, because Mike Evans is a guy who's got to win with position. Like, he doesn't really get a lot of separation a lot of times. He's not going to beat somebody with speed. He's going to beat somebody with position. And when he gets into a position, but the quarterback can't put the ball where it needs to be for him to maximize his positioning on the defensive back, that's going to hinder some of those things a little bit. I still think Mike Evans is one of the best receivers in the game.
Sure.
It's just, I still think he's young enough to still produce and be able to develop his yards after catch, game, part of his game. But at the end of the day, he's not a guy that I don't think you're going to go out there and say, okay, we're going to hit Mike like you will Deshaun, right? Like, we're not going to look to hit Mike on a 5-yard slant and watch him take it 60 more yards. We're looking to hit Mike on a 15-yard out, and for him to grab that thing with those strong hands, get those feet down, and move the chains.
All right, quick tidbits then on the other guys. Adam Humphries is the fan favorite there. Second in receptions last year, which was pretty impressive. Best catch percentage on the team. You throw in a couple of sleepers that we're hearing at camp. Bobo Wilson, Freddie Martino. We'll find out whether or not they could actually contribute. Of course, when the pads come on, and Justin Watson, who is the record breaker at Penn, and draft pick in the 5th round, is a receiver a lot of people were intrigued by in the draft. So give us an update on some of those guys that may not be so popular nationally.
Yeah, Adam Humphries is great. I mean, he can catch a screen route and take it. He's got some punt return capability. He'll block for you. He's a guy who's just a team player. The fans love him. Hopefully we can see him stay on the team, even beyond this year, and have a role on the roster, even with the emergence of Chris Godwin. And then looking deeper than that, Justin Watson was a guy when he was drafted. Honestly, I had to Google him. Like, I didn't know, sitting there watching the draft and trying to cover for the website and the podcast, I didn't really know much about him, so I had to Google him myself and look him up. And, he's intriguing. He definitely has the production. During the mini camps and the OTAs, he was struggling a little bit with some injuries. So we didn't get a whole lot about him. Dirk Cutter himself said that he wished he could see more out of Watson during this period. But, at this point in time in the offseason, it's more important to keep these young guys healthy so you can get them to camp and get them installed and kind of get those reps out of them when the pads come on and see what they can do physically. So more to come on him. Freddie Martino is a guy who's been on the team for a couple years now. He's made some appearances here and there. Nothing to he's not gonna crack the top four, anytime soon.
Okay.
But definitely a role player who can contribute when called upon. And Bobo Wilson, really for me right now, given the fact that Justin Watson really hasn't been able to do much yet, is the guy I'm kind of watching in the wide receiver group. I mean, he's fast as all get out. He's athletic. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got kind of the attitude you want in a football player. Just looking forward to seeing what he can do in camp and preseason. And maybe he might be able to get in there as the number 5 guy this season.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on Bobo Wilson for sure. Let's move over now to the tight end. You have O.J. Howard, the big boy from Alabama, and then you have Cameron Brate, the other Ivy Leaguer on the team, who had a really good season last season. He was actually the top tight end statistically for the team. But we would expect O.J. Howard to have a much better season with another year in the NFL. So after re-signing Brate, this is a heck of a combination, and I guess the Bucs are expecting an awful lot from both of them.
Yeah, I mean those two really. I mean they were pretty even. They were a little even when it came to snaps and all that. And OJ definitely kind of had. I would say OJ probably had more splash plays. He had those big touchdowns, that big wide open touchdown in Buffalo early in the season, and definitely showed why he was a first round draft pick. I think at the end of the day, when you draft a guy in the first round, you eventually expect him to become your starter.
Sure.
Right? And everybody loves Cameron Brate, especially Buccaneers fans love Cameron Brate. So it's no slight to Cameron Brate, but the expectation is eventually O.J. Howard's going to be the starter. When Brate came back, he signed a very team-friendly deal. The story was they basically told his agent, he's like, listen, I'm staying in Tampa, get it done, whatever you got to get done. So that's what he did. And I think it's a smart move for him because it's going to continue his success. He definitely earned a reputation, I think, by himself, just his work ethic and his ability to make things happen on the field. This is only going to help him kind of show how versatile he can be and how much of a team guy he's going to be moving forward. But eventually I do think that the tight end position is going to become O.J. Howard and somebody else, and Cameron Brate probably will end up leaving. But luckily for us, it's not this year. Hopefully it's not even next year. Maybe we're talking 3 years down the road or so. But, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's a guy who knows how to use tight ends. He knows how to spread the ball. Jameis Winston got a lot better at doing that when he got back from his injury last year. O.J. did end the year a little banged up. Hopefully it was more of something where he got sat because, the season kind of was what it was. There wasn't a whole lot to fight for. So no sense in putting your first-round draft pick out there already banged up to get further injured. But he seems to be coming back this year, healthier than ever, ready to go.
All right. By the way, Tampa Bay's offense 9th last year, but only 27th rushing offense. So they go out and they draft Ronald Jones in the second round. We're hearing that things are looking really good so far. We know what kind of a playmaker he was in college. Probably has to get a little bit stronger, but he is a physical back. So if he gets stronger, that'll limit any potential injuries. Considering Peyton Barber was the leading rusher for the team last year, that's not a good thing. So what do you think about the opportunity for Ronald Jones to possibly be the number 1 running back by time the season's over?
I'm incredibly excited to see what Rojo can do. Watching him in college, he's definitely an electric person, a dynamic player. I'm an Ohio State fan, so I got to watch him directly in that bowl game there. I've gone back and watched that bowl game many times because that's a defense right there that you want to see your running back prospects go against. And statistically, it wasn't great. The game wasn't great, obviously, for USC. It didn't come out the way they wanted to. But still, looking at Ronald Jones as an individual player, you see a lot of features in him that you want in an NFL running back. Just that desire to never quit, all the way through the end of the game, just giving it 100% on the last snap, as much as he did on the first snap. His versatility is something that I'm really looking forward to. I think a lot of Bucs fans are looking forward to. We really haven't had a running back in quite a while that can run the ball and catch the ball, kick outside, cut inside, and the hope is that Ronald Jones is going to become that guy. As far as Peyton Barber is concerned, I mean, he as a primary back, I don't think it's going to work out right now.
No.
But as a complementary back, kind of your muscle to kind of soften up, get those body blows to that defense early and often. Maybe a 3rd and 1 here and there, a goal line set here and there. He's definitely got a skill set that can be used on the team, but pairing him up with a guy like Ronald Jones is definitely something that I think is going to make the offense a little bit more electric, take some of that pressure off of Jameis Winston, which then in turn takes pressure off of Ryan Fitzpatrick for these 3 games or however many he's going to be starting for the team.
Okay.
So very excited to see what he can do. But the pads haven't gone on yet, so
Sure.
Right now it's all kind of just expectation and anticipation.
So you think Barber is the leader right now as the number 2 back, or is it pretty much an open competition with Rodgers and Sims? And Sims, it's just been all about injuries, right? Because outside of being a Tampa Bay fan, you're kind of wondering what's going on there. After looking so good early on in year 2.
Yeah, Charles Sims has definitely fallen off a little bit. He's a guy who's definitely got some raw athletic talent and ability. He's shown it from times. I think back to the pass. I think it was a pass and run or a catch and run against the Atlanta Falcons where he broke 17 tackles. But they had backups coming on the field for the Falcons, still couldn't tackle the guy. But then you have moments where he meets one guy in the backfield and dances to a 5-yard loss, and those are frustrating.
Yep.
So it's really just a matter of getting consistency out of Charles Sims. There's definitely talent and ability there. But whether it's his playability or whether it's the coaches just tapping in to those resources to get everything out of him that he can produce, it just hasn't been very consistent. And then Jacquizz Rodgers, I mean, he's a veteran presence. He's a smart guy. He knows how to stick in the NFL. He's been around for a long time. He's got special teams contributions that he brings to the field. So I think he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on as far as earning a roster spot potentially. But Peyton Barber right now, I think he's probably penciled in at number 2.
Okay.
And then Sean Wilson, the kid out of Duke, has definitely done some things in the mini camps and the OTA so far to really turn some heads.
Okay.
Again, he's a little bit smaller. Definitely an athletic guy, definitely another versatile running back, similar to Ronald Jones in that, the thought is he can run and catch a little bit better than some other backs can. But again, once the pads get on, dude's 5'9", so we got to see how he can measure up once the pads go on and the hits are real.
By the way, is there somebody that can step up this year and elevate the return game? Is there a new player on the roster that you're looking at that hopefully will get the reps during preseason games and might be able to improve upon the week average from the team last year?
Yeah, I think Sean Wilson is that guy, that same Duke running back, and I think that's something that is going to help him possibly make the roster. I see the team carrying 4 running backs this year. They carried 4 last year. I don't see why they would go away from that, especially protect against injury. And if Sean Wilson go out there in the preseason and take advantage of his reps with the second team or third team or the special team, whatever it is, and show some of that dynamic ability that we've heard a little bit about and seen a little bit about from the mini camps and the OTAs, then he's definitely a guy who could possibly push either Quiz Rodgers or Charles Sims off the roster come 53.
All right, let's see. Offensive line, just quickly here. Yeah, I got to ask you, the whole Donovan Smith thing, it doesn't appear that this is working out. I know they keep talking him up. Okay, and I get that, I really do, especially from somebody who was picked in the second round. But this is still a situation that I was kind of surprised the Bucs didn't add on as far as the draft or free agency. I mean, Alex Kappa, I got to tell you right now, I was shocked that the Bucs picked him in the third round. Shocked. And I just don't see enough quality players on the offensive line right now. Is this a worry spot for the team?
So I think the starting 5 is going to be better this year than it was last year. Donovan Smith actually had one of his better seasons last season. I think some of the problems, I think, going with Donovan Smith, the offensive line definitely works as a unit. It's not an individual task so much as it is a joint effort. I think some of the turnover that he's had next to him and some of the fluctuation with the injuries and everything else going on since Logan Mankins left has definitely kind of hindered his own personal development. I don't want to make excuses for him, but I think that there's a little bit more in Donovan Smith. I'll admit I'm definitely one of the guys that was in the camp of he looks more like a right tackle to me than a left tackle.
Okay.
I still think his first step is a little bit slow. But, again, we had to see what he's brought to the table this year. The team's very confident in him, probably a little bit more confident than everybody else. Even a guy like me who's going to sit here and defend him a little bit is not as confident as the team seems to be. But with Ali Marpet moving the left side there, with Ryan Jensen coming in at center, really my concern is the right side of the line, and they got to get that figured out. You got some injuries there at the right tackle position. DeMar Dotson, he's coming back from, and then the guard position, who's going to fill that slot? Alex Kappa, I don't want to come out right now and say that he's a threat to steal a starting role there on the right side of the field, but
sure.
The Buccaneers have shown in the past that anybody who comes in, doesn't matter where you were drafted, how much you're getting paid, if you come in and outperform the guy ahead of you, you're going to move up.
Okay. So the right guard spot, that's the position on the team as far as the offensive line that is going to be the biggest question in camp.
For me, that's the one I'm kind of looking for the most. I think if DeMar Dotson is healthy, he's the right tackle. So really, it's getting that right guard position figured out.
All right, let's go to defense. We've got about a little bit more than 5 minutes, so we'll try to run through here on defense. And we'll start, first of all, quickly with the coach on defense, Mike Smith. From outside perspective, this is somebody that the fans don't like.
All right.
Why? And statistically, I can understand why. I mean, you're talking about worst defense in the league last year. No production for sacks, terrible on third downs. So what was, I mean, and I kind of understand, the buddy system too. Dirk Cutter was a coach for Smith, and now Smith's a coach for Cutter. So I could also see why that might, wrangle some fans and maybe some favoritism there for a coach that really isn't doing his job. But Smith is a guy that you would have thought should be doing his job. He's got credentials. So what's going on? Is it more of a personnel problem, or do you think there's more of a coaching problem?
I think some of it had to do with personnel, honestly. In 2017, and this is kind of what the Glazers referenced when they retained everybody. I know eventually the defensive line coach was replaced, but in the initial aftermath of the season, everybody was just retained, and the Glazers really pointed to injuries as one of the reasons they decided to go that direction. When the Buccaneers came in 2017, I think they were looking to lean real heavily on Noah Spence and a little bit on Jaquez Smith to really be their pass rushing specialist.
Okay.
Well, Jack Smith, just as he had his entire career leading up to them, that point, struggled with injury. Because I'll tell you right now, Jack Smith's the guy that when he's healthy and on the field, he might be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. The problem is his body, as I like to say, his body doesn't agree with his career choice. And that's what happened again in 2017. He just wasn't able to be on the field. Noah Spence again got hurt, so he wasn't on the field. So really, you lost both your pass rushing guys, and that really did hurt the defense. So what you ended up with was a defensive line that really couldn't get a lot of consistent pressure in the way of sacks on the quarterback. And so you had a secondary that was then playing soft because they knew that they couldn't take the big risks that they wanted to take because of the lack of pressure on the quarterback. And when you have a defense that's then playing soft on the back end, isn't getting pressure on the front end, what you end up with is a fan base it's extremely frustrated because you see that what's happening isn't working, but we don't see any more aggression coming out of the defense. However, on the defensive coordinator side of the house, bringing more pressure from the back end of the defense when the front end is getting manhandled doesn't make any sense. You're just going to end up getting beat over the top over and over again. So it's kind of a double-edged sword at that point where the fan base is angry because you're not getting more aggressive. You can't get more aggressive because you're going to get burned even worse. So you are where you are. And Mike Smith, I'll tell you, he's handled it very professionally. Hasn't lashed out at the fans in the meeting or anything like that. But I think that's really where it boils down to is he didn't have the horses to get his defense a pass rush, and so it forced his secondary to play softer. But I think that's where you see the focus this year was getting better up front, getting better on the defensive line to create that pressure so that secondary can play a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, you look at, we all know the talent of Vita Vea. This kid is, an elite run defender, Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. Combining him with Gerald McCoy is going to be awfully good, you would think, on the interior. You bring in Unrein and Allen, the free agency, so they look set there. You bring in Jason Pierre-Paul, Vinnie Curry, and free agency on the outside to go along with Spence and also Golston. And on paper, you say to yourself, wow, there's some really talented players to work with here as long as everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, the real question, when you look at our roster, like you said, you look at it more. The problem now is how do you keep everybody happy with snap count? That's your bigger problem. But we'll see how it all gels, because on that point, looking at the guys they're replacing, the guys they lost this last offseason versus the guys they got back, they're replacing over half of their snaps from last season. That's how many guys they got rid of from the defensive line this year. So it's, that's going to be a new challenge in itself for Brenton Buckner, the new defensive line coach, is getting all these new pieces to work well together because they have a very short amount of time to replace over half of their contributions from last year.
All right, at linebacker, same unit, David Alexander, Beckwith. You added Sitchie as far as a rookie. He just has to stay healthy. What do you think about, Alexander and Beckwith? I'm still kind of torn with those guys. I'm not sure exactly whether or not they're young and they've flashed. You tell me. You see these guys all the time. What do you think about? We know how good David is, but are you pleased so far or disappointed with Alexander and Beckwith?
Very happy with Alexander Beck, especially Beckwith coming off in his rookie year. What he's able to do coming off the injury he sustained there his last year in college. Very happy with what he was able to do. Hopefully he can pick up right where he left off when he comes back from his ankle injury that he's recovering from.
Okay.
As far as Quan Alexander is concerned, I mean, he's been a diamond in the rough to the truest sense. I remember talking to him his first training camp right there in the beginning of training camp, and I was very early in my kind of media efforts, and I was able to get the interview because nobody else was really asking to interview him. I was like the only guy asking to interview Quan Alexander, and I remember I still have the tape of that recording or that interview today, and I remember telling him, man, like, hey, I see something in you that obviously the coaches are starting to see because he had just started getting some reps with the ones, and to see where he's come from since then is just great because he was very raw coming out of LSU, but he's been able to catch up to the speed of the NFL game a lot faster than I think a lot of people expected him to. He still reacts a little bit quicker using just his eyes. And what I mean is, like, he sees something and he reacts very quickly, which is a great feature to have in a middle linebacker. But what he's missing right now, not missing, but what hasn't developed completely is that vision and then that thought process of what I've seen on tape, what I've studied, what I know my opponent likes to do. And because of that, he will sometimes get caught over pursuing. Because he doesn't quite read the cutbacks or the backside block or something like that.
Okay.
But I think that's coming, and I think he got better a little bit about that last year. Hopefully this year he's getting a little bit better about that too. And I know that's something that entire linebacker group kind of prides themselves on, is not only being fast, athletic, and quick and aggressive, but also being smart. So I really see that as something that he's going to be working on, and hopefully we see a good leap this year.
And of course, you would also think that their production overall will look a lot better with a more stable defensive front. So,
definitely, yeah. If they can get a better defensive line, they'll definitely, be a lot better stat-wise, production-wise.
All right, and then finally in the secondary, Grimes was brought back to the team and led the team in PDs, had 3 interceptions. But he's going to be 35, but before camp. I might even be 35 now. I'm not sure when his birthday was, but so that's old. And Hargraves, he's the tricky one because of the fact that he just didn't take off. He was benched, for a short period of time last year, placed on IR with a hamstring injury after week 10. So a very disappointing season for Hargraves after it looked like he was the real deal in year 1.
Yeah, I mean, Brent Grimes, I really think he kind of saved the team, to be quite honest with you, because him coming back really gave the Buccaneers one less position they had to worry about covering. Because when Brent Grimes is on the field and he's healthy, which he's been able to do and stay healthy for most of his career, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. If not the best cornerback in the division, definitely one of them. So he definitely did the team a favor there by coming back. I know they're paying him, so He's getting his fair share, but. You look at the draft that the Buccaneers had. They drafted 3 defensive backs in the first 4 rounds. Without Brent Grimes coming back, that might be 4 defensive backs in the first 4 rounds. I mean, they already had to go defensive back heavy, given Brent Grimes' return. Without his return, there's no telling. We might have seen the Buccaneers just draft nothing but cornerbacks, to be honest with you. Vernon Hargraves continues to be a little bit of a frustration. Honestly, right now, I mean, this isn't coming from any type of inside source in one Buck or anything, but I almost kind of get the feeling the Buccaneers are trying to give him every last chance to be an outside defender to justify that first-round draft pick. Because right now, what he looks like is a really good slot defender, a really good inside player who likes to get physical in there on the inside, and that's where he belongs. We'll see how guys like Carlton Davis come into camp, and even MJ Stewart might battle a little bit for that. Ryan Smith has got the athleticism. He just hasn't had really the technical side of things down, so he's got another opportunity to prove himself. But at the end of the day, I really think Hargraves belongs on the inside. I just think the Bucs are trying to get every last bite of the apple, so to speak, to get him as an outside defender because he is a first-round draft pick. So obviously, if you're going to look at picking up his 5th-year option, I don't think you pick up a 5th-year option for a slot cornerback versus an outside defender. So I think that's what they're trying to do is just go every rep they can give him outside to see if he's worth that outside position, worth that outside cornerback money, because those guys make different amounts of money in the NFL right now. So I think that's really what they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, I think Hargraves settles inside. And if I was forced to pick today, I'd probably predict Carlton Davis starting outside opposite Brent Grimes.
All right, and MJ Stewart will probably be the backup slot guy behind Hargraves?
Yeah, I think he's just a very versatile guy. I think he's going to be a kind of a package guy depending on the situation they're in and the formation the offense shows. He's a guy who can play off a little bit. He can play in the slot, and he can range a little bit better than some people give him credit for.
So by Carlton Davis, he has a lot of talent. So he's probably the one guy in the secondary, the new guy in the secondary that has the most upside, right?
Yeah, from what I'm seeing so far, yeah, he's definitely the guy that I'm watching when training camp starts.
All right, and safety, still unsure about this group. Conti, Tandy, Justin Evans. They add in Whitehead in the fourth round. He might have been drafted a little bit higher than expected, but you'll have to let me know about how he's looked so far. And I was actually, if you would have flipped it and said Whitehead would have been a free agent and Igwebuike would have been drafted in the fourth round, I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. So I was kind of surprised that it was flipped, but you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where these guys were drafted. They're both in camp.
Yeah, exactly. You said it. They're both on the team. They both have the opportunity to come and make an impact. That's why Godwin chose the Buccaneers, according to his own words, was he looked at the opportunity there in Tampa, and that gave him the best chance to kind of showcase his talents. The safety position is, I honestly think we're set. I think the team is really set with Justin Evans and Chris Conte as the starters for right now.
Okay.
Unless somebody comes into camp in the preseason and just really kind of blows the socks off everybody, kind of like when Quan Alexander came in as a rookie and really just kind of kicked the door down on that starting job. I don't think we're going to see a change, at least in the beginning of the season. So I definitely think Whitehead has a chance to produce. Godwin has a chance to produce. And Keith Tandy's a guy who was kind of an enigma last year because he finished 2016 so strong that a lot of us really expected him and Conte to be the tandem coming in 2017, and it just didn't happen. So, again, with these young guys coming in, they've got some athleticism, some ball skills, some physicality to them that Keith Tandy kind of doesn't really possess right now, and just gauging off of what happened last year, he may be on the outside looking in when it comes down to this.
All right, and Catanzaro is also the new kicker, so I know that was a disaster last year with Folk, with him getting off to a slow start, getting hurt. But Catanzaro is, he had a pretty decent season for the Jets last year, so, and I hear that he chose Tampa Bay over the Jets because of the weather, which is fine, but that's a position I'm sure you guys would like to get settled down, and hopefully you'll have a good year in Tampa Bay. Anybody else that we did not cover? Any other sleepers or anything else? Any other storylines that we should be keeping an eye on, or do you think we got it all?
I think we hit pretty much all of it. I mean, I think the only other person maybe to keep an eye out on would be Reuben Holcomb, offensive lineman out of Indianapolis. He's another small school guy, and the Bucs have had some success with small school linemen. And like you said, looking at the depth on the offensive line, it looks a little suspect. So this is a young man who obviously cherishes his opportunity. He's a hard worker, and he was noticed for a reason coming out of a school as small as he did. He was noticed for a reason, and working with guys like Ali Marpet and Ryan Jensen on interior blocking schemes and all that. Definitely a person who could challenge for a roster spot once training camps get started.
All right, David, I appreciate it. You did a great job. We look forward to talking to you again, either sometime before or during the season. And Twitter handle is DH82_Bucks. Once again, Locks on Bucks podcast. And by the way, you mentioned that you had a Google for Justin Watson. Next time, make sure you get that Our Lads draft guide so you don't have to worry about that next time. So
yeah, I definitely will. Yeah,
David, I appreciate it again. Thanks a lot for protecting us and being an Army guy. And even though you're an Ohio State fan and I'm a Michigan fan, I won't hold that against you. So appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, that is once again David Harrison joining us here talking Tampa Bay Bucks football on the OFN. All right, we'll be back later today with more training camp coverage here on the OFN as we talk Jacksonville Jaguars football with Mike Kay, Jags beat writer for the First Coast News in Jacksonville. And don't forget to order a subscription of your choosing, including the 2018 Ourlads NFL Draft Review Guide right here at ourlads.com. Follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. Receive our on-demand media alerts for every OFN show and interview, including this one. And thanks for listening to this edition of the OFN Meeting Room with Craig DePalma on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season.